After all the path that we have taken, this is the result of everything that we have created, everything that we design for ourselves. So from a tiny little triangle that has three options, one that is the subconscious, that spread itself into the unconscious to observe and acknowledge itself through the consciousness in order to go back to the subconscious and create another option, and then another option, and then another option, and so on. From that little aspect of our consciousness, we start to design the most complex structure. And this complexity that we have here is because every step that we have done in the creation of this universe has become more complex and more complex in order to understand a little bit better who we are, to understand step by step every piece in which the universe is divided. But from the point of view of humanity, we start to interpret that our job is to interpret and understand the entire universe because the universe is very complex. But actually, we are part of that universe that was very simple. It was just one idea, only one spot. There was nothing else. It was just a void, and all the forces were together in one. And it was us that decided to split ourselves in two. It was us that decided as oneness to create a third option. And this third option created another option, and so on. So we are the result of a complexity that actually is born from a very simple aspect. Everything that we have created, everything that exists today in the universe, not as humans, but as the divine being, as the mind itself of the cosmos, of the universe, has spread systems after systems to define the sign through frequencies, through vibrations, through waves, through particles, different ways in which you can reorganize the same thing. Let's remember this. If we have come from the void, from the nothing, the only other option of nothing is everything. So from 0, we can go to 1. And the difference between one and the other is basically nothing. We are just 1 and 0 at the same time. It's just a tiny little perception or decision that makes us see everything or makes us observe the nothing. So it's just a point of view, it's just a decision, a change of mind. And this is the quantum reality. Quantum is the word for quantification. Is how much is this? That's the actual word for quantum. So when people were trying to understand what's a quantum, it was what's the minimum quantification of matter or energy that we can measure. So when they found that quantum, they said this must be the basic of measurement. But then they found more things, and now we have also a theory, which is what is reality. So we start to call a quantic reality to everything that we don't understand, when quantum reality is something that we actually kind of know how to manage today. So it's something that you can quantify. But when we go to the philosophical idea of 0 is equal 1, 1 equals 0, so what we understand is that nothing transforms the everything, and the everything becomes nothing. So from that point of view, is the nothing that created the entire mind of the universe, shaping the subconscious that gave options to the unconscious that designed the idea of the conscious. And this Holy Trinity is something that we can also interpret as nothing that creates a wave, that manifests as a particle, that changes as a wave, to manifest again as a particle, to come back as a wave, to become another particle. Wave or particle, nothing, everything. So the different consciousness are actually different aspects of seeing something that doesn't exist. It's something that is not real. It's just a perception of the universe that is not able to be measured. So because it's so difficult to be measured, we have to create ideas around it. So that's why between the waves and the particles, we created the idea of links. And that created the idea of a network. And that network created the idea of structures in the universe. So we have time and space, and the observer of time and space, the one that moves through time and space. So we created the Holy Trinity. For some people, it was, what is the Holy Trinity? The Holy Ghost, the Father, and the Son, for example. Or it can be electron, neutron, and proton. It doesn't matter where you go, you will find a Holy Trinity that tries to explain between the wave and the particle how everything is connected to one observer. So it's three. In this case, what we started to do is from this tiny wave that creates a particle, or becomes a particle actually, this wave that becomes a particle, you have a wave that vibrating in a certain speed, it creates a certain particle. So if you change the speed, which means the frequency of that particle, what you do is to create another shape, another structure. If you change again the frequency of that, you create another structure. So all the chemical elements, the atomic realm in the universe, are just different vibrations of the same thing, reorganizing themselves in a different way. Out of nothing, it creates the everything. So this everything can be split in different pieces, which are different frequencies, which means different time frames of vibrations. So we could kind of appreciate something. If everything vibrates at the same time, it's equal zero. So we cannot see it. So we need the one to be split in billions and billions possibilities so we can actually see the framework of the nothing. And that's what creates the atomic realm and then the different links and the different creation. So what we are is just a consequence of that. And we have changed billions and billions of frequencies in order for the particles to be seen and appreciated, and now we can feel the net. So we became so complex that eventually we created this complexity that you might say, oh yeah, I know it, but I cannot understand it. It's a mess. I don't understand where to start, what is the beginning, what is the end, where to follow, because I am just a tiny little particle in between all these lines. But this is what you have been building since the very beginning. So Aquarius' mind was the one that said, what if this tiny little spark that doesn't exist, we switch it and turn it in this way, and switch it and turn it in this way, so we can create different options of the same thing. And that's all the structures that the spark started to create around designing an atom that we call Taurus. A Taurus, the Taurus constellation, is actually a toroid, the toroidal magnetical field that comes back constantly to oneself. So this tiny little spark started to spin in a toroidal way, so we created the torus, the house. This torus then multiplied itself in different cuts, creating different particles or ions that created Gemini. These different atoms and particles created then a strong link of electricity, which is the love that we call Cancer. Then the strength of all of them together creates fire in the center, the atomic power, which is Leo. And then this atomic power starts to split and creates structures around, which is atoms that creates molecules, and that's Virgo. Then these molecules will follow certain rules to have balance, and that's what we call antihomerous structures. One opposite to the other to find balance. So they create structures that can be held through time and space. These structures then will know that one, the opposite, creates poison and the other one creates medicine. So both together can transform reality, make alchemy. That's how you can turn some elements into other elements, by switching the positions of the atoms, of the ions. Once you do that, once you transform all that in Scorpio, the structures starts to share information. The ions starts to split and share with other structures because of the alchemy that has been done. It transforms our reality into different elements, from hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and helium. We start to create gold, a sun. We start to create all the minerals, the silica, all the things that exist today. So that's the process of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is the expansion of all the things. And once we created all this expansion, what we have is the replica of that. So the carbon will replicate itself thousands of times until it finds a way to create life. Helium will try to replicate itself thousands of times and until it creates a star. And so on until all the structures starts to create this reality that we can sense and feel today and we can observe today. And that is Capricorn. It creates structures that are constantly replicating and transforming into a better one. And then we go to Aquarius, which is, but this is just a perception. This is the sun that we see, the air that we feel, the body that we own, we think. It's just a perception, because actually there was nothing. There was just emptiness. And now we can understand through Aquarius that there are different dimensions of the same thing, that there are different perceptions, realities that can be spread from the same thing. And that's when we become crazy, because we don't know where we are in the reality. We don't know in which dimension, which timeline, in which reality are we doing our things. And the question is, do we really exist? And when Aquarius does the question, do we really exist? Because I am everywhere and I don't find myself anywhere at the same time. So who am I? And suddenly I go back to nothing. And the nothing takes me to the portal of Pisces. What is the portal of Pisces? It's the one that tells me you have to transcend everything, because the only way to exist is to believe. The only way to acknowledge that everything exists is to believe it. If you don't believe it, it doesn't exist. If you don't project it with your mind, subconscious, unconscious, and conscious, this doesn't make sense. Because in reality, there is nothing. The only reason why everything exists is because we believe it. In the Saxon languages, believe, which comes from the languages of Europe, means be lieve, which is to be what you love. That's the origin of believe. To be what you love, to become what you feel. That's the term of believe. So you become what you feel, what you think, what you move inside of you. So the creation of all things actually is basically faith. You have to trust your mind, because your mind is the one that created all this. So if we want to transcend this reality, what we have to do is to become what we love, is to realize that we are creating this reality through our minds. So Pisces reminds us that everything exists, all the path that we have created exists just because our ideas have created this initiatic path. It's not because someone else have designed this for us, but it's because we are the everything. We are not just Matias or someone else, one of you, deciding what do we live. We are the zero becoming one. And in the middle of the zero and the one is the eternity of options that we call Matias and someone else. So from the zero to become the one, we have to experience billions of options. And one of those billions of options is each one of us, or each one of our atoms. And then when we reach unity, we go backwards to zero again. We become the nothing as we become the everything. And we recognize something, which is there is no one that is believing or creating. It is just the everything believing and creating. It's becoming what it feels. It's believing. In Spanish, the word is creer or crear, which is the same thing, which comes from the word cri, that means to break a stone, to break something in two. So when I split myself in two, I start to create. So to believe in Spanish languages and in Latin languages, it means I have to break myself in order to find myself. And the only way in which I can believe something is if I create something. That's the meaning of the word. So that's why we have to all the time create what we believe. We are creators as we think. And in these terms, we have to understand that in history, Pisces represented the moment when the person that have lived everything sat down in a cave or under a tree and starts to meditate, to think about the nonsense of reality, and starts to understand that the tree is the same as the stone, and the stone is the same as my body, because I survive and exist because I ate the plant and I became the stone. The same chemical elements that are in the sun, in a black hole, in the stone, in my meal, in the house, in the mountain, in my bones are the same. So who am I in all this? I am just another projection of something that is in the atomic realms. If you go to the very essence of everything, you are nothing else but a wave that is deciding to be a particle or a wave. It's just an idea of an expression that doesn't exist. So when you go to the very beginning of everything, the only thing that keeps us all together and existing is an idea. And that's what Pisces represents in history. The avatars, the people that has sat down there in the middle of nowhere, and just by thinking about it, they became divine on earth. They enlighten, and they realize that it doesn't matter the shape that we are everything. That I can sit down and speak with a stone, that I can just look up and become the sun, that there are no distance between anything, that everything is connected, and the only way in which I can access everything is through an idea, a simple idea that makes me remember I am all this. And that's why I can become all that as I feel all that. So that's why the word for the portal of Pisces is I believe, and it's about transcending all things. It's about transcending all the different patterns, realities that we have created. And that's why we relate Pisces with the most spiritual sign, because it's the one that has to release everything in order to become the everything. It's the one that needs to feel the biggest of the voids in order to become God. And that's why it's the 12th step of all this path, because it's the one that shows us that all the path that we have created, it was just in our minds, and the only thing that we are doing is to take a walk throughout the subconscious and to just enjoy the path through the unconscious and just sit down and observe the beauty of our consciousness. It's not about running towards enlightenment. It's not about trying to create or escape somewhere. It's realizing that everything is just an idea between 0 and 1. And all the chaos and the complexity of the universe is just a way for the mind to have fun. And that's why when you arrive to the highest and most enlightened moment of the universe in the Pisces energy, when you understand the whole, the everything, there is no other option that start laughing like a child and light up the spark again and begin with Aries. So begin again. And that's why we will always come back from death to be reborn, just because the everything, when it becomes nothing, finds no other option than become one again. And that's how the initiatic path repeats once and again, just because of the joy of having an idea. So I advise you for this step, which is Pisces, to just sit down under the tree, smile, and remember every time that as a child you thought the impossible. And remember and hold that idea, that feeling of I can be anything I want. So remember that moment, laugh, play, and connect with the highest spiritual feeling that you can have, which is I believe I can become anything.